What's up, guys? My name's Droven. I'm back again today with some more scary Reddit stories. I'm going to be telling these stories while I'm building a roller coaster from the top of my Minecraft house all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. I picked some really good stories for today, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. The first story for today is called I Watched My Uncle's Ranch While He Was Away, and I'm Never Going Back. So, the past few days have been really stressful. My friend suggested that I should write about what happened to me and share it on this page, but I don't know how this would make me feel better. I guess in a way, it could be a warning, but I highly doubt anyone would believe this anyway. It all started when I got a call from my Uncle Shag last week. His real name was Chuck, but I've always called him Shag on account of his shaggy beard ever since I was little. That's not important. Anyway, his appendix had burst and he had to go in for surgery to get it removed. He asked me if I could house sit for him and get some work done around his ranch while he was in the hospital. Feed the livestock, fix the fences, just simple things he normally did. I told him I could and asked if I could bring my dog Bear since I had just adopted him and didn't have anyone to look after him while I was gone. He said I could as long as he didn't bother the other animals. I hadn't been to my uncle's ranch in a few years. It was in a desert area in Utah, but I still knew how to get there, so I made sure to pack whatever I would need for a few days there. Some movies since there was no Wi-Fi at the ranch, and a couple of snacks for me and dog food for Bear. It was going to be a 2-hour ride and I hadn't eaten lunch yet, so I stopped by a fast food drive-thru, ordering myself a veggie patty, diet soda, and a small patty for Bear to eat. On the drive to the ranch, I noticed deer carcasses on the side of the road. I didn't think much of it, besides the fact that it was so weird to see dead deer all the way out here. I thought they couldn't be found in areas like this. A few minutes later, I would drive up to my uncle's ranch. I parked near the house that was farthest from the cattle so they didn't get spooked and run away. As soon as I opened the car door to let Bear out, he made a sprint to the cows. He barked and ran around a few of the cows wanting to play, but some walked away and others just ignored him. After about 2 minutes of trying to make new friends, Bear gave up and went to do his business and mark his territory. I smiled at Bear. I had a feeling he was going to have fun here. I turned my head to see a cow staring at me. It was thin. I could see it had some meat on its bones, but I could tell it was becoming emaciated. I looked down to see that it must have been looking at the burger. "Hey, it's a veggie patty. I'm on your side, buddy," I said as I raised it and pointed to it. Suddenly, I hear Bear yelp. I dropped my burger and ran towards him to see what was wrong. He had stepped on a broken piece of cactus. I quickly pulled out the thorns from his paw while he growled each time, but afterwards I was rewarded with licks to my face. I spent the rest of the day doing chores and working around the ranch. I won't bore you with details of the work I had to do, but there was one peculiar thing that happened throughout the day. Bear kept growling at the anemic cow from a distance. He just wouldn't go near the thing. He would even grab my pants leg if I was heading in its direction. It was definitely strange, but I thought the cow was sick, and Bear didn't want either of us to catch whatever it had. Animals are funny like that. They can sense what humans can't. That should have tipped me off that something was wrong. By the time I got dinner ready for Bear and me, the sun was already setting. My uncle left me a note telling me that his neighbor went grocery shopping before I came and left their number in case I needed them. There wasn't any Wi-Fi all the way out here, but there was a landline I could use. This is just like what the pioneers used back in the day, I joked to myself knowing no one was around to laugh. I had set Bear's bowl down and made my way to the living room. Uncle Shag didn't have cable, but he did have an old VHS player. As I set my food down on the living room table, I searched for something to watch. I ended up choosing Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. When that was finished, I rewound the tape and chose Monty Python and the Holy Grail to watch next. I ended up falling asleep during the movie. I looked at the clock, 12:09, past midnight. I hadn't finished my dinner, but decided to just have leftovers tomorrow. I got up and headed toward the guest room with Bear following me. I changed into a pair of boxers and got into bed. I fell right back to sleep as soon as I got into bed. I could feel the weight of Bear as he jumped on the bed and laid his body on my legs, using my stomach as a pillow. The last thing I remembered before I gave myself up to the sweet relaxation of sleep was petting Bear's head. I was awoken with the sound of a high-pitched yelp. I quickly got up and in the process woke Bear up as well. No, that's not right. it was more like he was awoken by the same sound. I thought it came from him at first, but a few seconds later we heard the yelp again. It was longer by a few seconds. Bear began to quietly growl as the yelp slowly went from high pitch to a lower tone. I looked out the window to see if it was a coyote. One of the chores was to set bear traps around the perimeter so predators couldn't hurt the livestock. I saw nothing to suggest that anything was out there. I left the guest room to see if I'd left the TV on before going to bed, and sure enough, I did. It was just static. The yelping sound must have been coming from the movie before it ended and became static. I turned the TV off and made a mental note to rewind it in the morning. For the rest of the night, there was no other disturbance. Bear calmed down as well. I checked the time before going back to sleep, 4:44 a.m. Morning arrived with the sound of a rooster making its iconic alarming sound. I got dressed and made breakfast for Bear and me, scrambled eggs with a side of orange juice and dog food. I stepped out to get started with chores and was horrified to see the mutilated corpses of 3 cows. They were spread apart in front of fences, blood from each body colliding into one giant pool, and swarms of flies hovering over the remains. It's hard to talk about the details, but I'll try to be as thorough as I can. Each cow had its stomach ripped open, their entrails spilling out like stuffing from a worn-out toy that's been neglected over the years. The thing I had noticed was their throats. They had all been slit, as if they could keep them from making any noise. I was sick. The first thing I see in the morning is cow mutilation. I threw up. I ran towards the livestock, praying this was the only casualty. Luckily, it was. The rest of the cows were huddled together in a sort of protection formation. You see, for some herbivores that have young or sick members in their herd, they form a sort of barrier surrounding them so that predators can't get through to them. I looked around to see if there were any footprints of what had been there. Bear had come out of the house at this point, and he followed me as I searched for clues, but ended up finding nothing. No blood trail, no footprints. I looked over again at the herd. I saw the thin cow from yesterday. It was standing in the same place. If it wasn't moving its tail every few seconds, I would have thought it was a cardboard cutout. The only difference from yesterday was that its entire snout was missing. Oh my gosh. I saw something similar a while ago while I was watching this nature documentary about African wildlife. There was a zebra drinking water from a watering hole when suddenly a crocodile ripped its face off. To my shock, the zebra was still alive, but almost its entire face was missing, leaving only a gaping hole of exposed skull a few centimeters under its eyes. I thought how cruel nature can be sometimes, and what was in front of me was just another example. I went over to approach it, but Bear stopped me. He had jumped in front of me and growled for me to go the other way. It wasn't an aggressive growl, but more like he was warning me of something. I lowered myself and began to rub his head. "It's okay, Bear. I'm going to go get something to put that thing out of its misery. Then I'll get a shovel to bury the rest of the cattle," I said, still completely confused, not knowing who or what did this. I went back into the house to get my uncle's double-barrel shotgun. It was going to be a messy outcome for that cow, but a quick one. Just as I loaded the gun, I heard the sound of Bear snarling like a mad dog. I thought the culprit had come back to finish off the rest of the herd, so I ran out as fast as I could. I came back to Bear barking at nothing. Like he just chose a direction and started to bark like a mad dog. I noticed that the snoutless cow wasn't there anymore and thought that it wandered off to die on its own. I felt bad. I was about to end its life quickly so it wouldn't have to suffer any longer. Just then, I realized something. Did whoever did this come back for the other cow? Is that why Bear is acting like this? I thought to myself as I looked in the direction Bear was barking at. I put the shotgun away and went to get a shovel and some bear traps my uncle had in his shed. I was disappointed to see there was only one in the shed. To my knowledge, I thought he had more, but one was better than none. When I came back, I put the bear trap aside and started digging graves for the cattle, after which I would walk towards the tractor. Cows weigh a shit ton, and I had a better chance at marrying a model than pushing one barehanded. Bear followed me and jumped into the search next to me as I drove toward the bodies. The first 2 took effort to lift, but were easy to move as I lowered them into pre-dug graves. However, the last body was lifted without ease compared to the other 2. I lowered it back to the ground and got out of the tractor. I could hear Bear growl slowly as I went to inspect the corpse. I lowered myself and tried to lift the body. It was still heavy, but I could get it off the ground for a few seconds before giving in. I ended up dropping the body, making it topple to its side so it faced me. I was shocked when I saw it had no snout. I was sure that the only surviving cow had a snout missing, but that was nowhere to be seen. Upon further inspection, there was a very large slit down the cow's body. I brushed my fingers against it and saw that the slit opened like a purse. I gagged as I saw that there were no organs inside the corpse, only bone and muscle. My first thoughts weren't, why did it have no organs, or what did this? The thing I wanted to know most was, if this corpse was the snoutless cow, where did the other body go? I got a sudden chill and stood up to check my surroundings. The atmosphere felt off. Just then, I flinched as I felt the drop of rain on my forehead, followed by a few more as the sky began to grow dark and shower the land. I finished burying the last corpse and took Bear with me inside. Whatever work I had for the day could wait until tomorrow. A few hours had gone by, but the rain didn't let up. It was even starting to thunder, which I didn't mind, but Bear whined and hid in the corner. His personality compared to earlier was like someone had flipped a light switch in his brain. I fed both of us and was about to find a movie to watch, but the power went out. The only source of light I had at the moment was my phone. However, my uncle is prepared for times like this. I took a few candles from his closet and lit a few around the house. After lighting a third candle, I looked at the rain through a window. I couldn't see much but darkness and the occasional flash of lightning. I heard Bear whimper more and rubbed his back, letting him know that I'm here before I put a blanket around him. After dinner, I put my plate in the sink and thought of going to bed early since there was nothing else to do. As I undressed, I looked through the bedroom window. A flash of lightning showed that there was a figure near the cow's fence. Oh, I don't know about you guys. I would not be going towards that figure. Like, I'm getting that shotgun and I'm sitting by the door. I did a double take, but couldn't see anything for a few seconds until the next flash of lightning struck. When it did, the figure had already been inside the fence, and the flash caught the moment it raised its arm and attacked the cow's throat. That must be the cow killer, I thought as I ran out of the house. Yeah, you're braver than me. A dumb idea to run out during a storm, I know, but if I didn't catch this guy now, then I don't know when I could. I grabbed the double-barrel shotgun and made my way to where I saw the figure last. The only thing I found was a pool of blood with a trail leading away from the fence. The herd of cows within the fence mooed in fear as the adults surrounded the young. I followed the trail for a few minutes before I stopped. I heard some sort of noise. I tried to listen to where the noise was coming from, but as the sound of thunder roared, it stopped. I held my breath. Suddenly, a flash of lightning struck and revealed the figure 20 meters away from me. It was hunched over one of the cows, eating it while it was still alive. Before the light faded, I could barely recognize its appearance. It was a cow with a slit throat. It began to slowly rise, like it knew how to stand up like a person. When the next flash of lightning struck, it threw itself backwards and began to spider walk further away. I gasped and turned around, making a beeline back to the house with only the flashes of lightning to guide my way. I couldn't hear if the thing was following me or not, but I wasn't going to risk looking back. The sound of Bear's barking guided my way to the house as I got closer. I would leap through the door and slam it shut, locking both locks on the door. Just as I did, my legs finally gave in as I dropped to the floor, clutching the shotgun tightly against my wet, cold, bare chest. I kept repeating, "What was that?" in my head for the next 2 minutes as I began to hyperventilate. When you see something your brain cannot comprehend, it tries to rationalize what it could logically be by filling in the gaps with what it already knows to try and make it make sense. However, there was nothing about what I just saw that made sense whatsoever. Bear's barking was replaced with a low growl as he headed towards me. He watched the door as I was slowly calming down. "It's okay, Bear, it's okay," I said to calm Bear down, but really it was to reassure myself. I noticed Bear was slowly moving his head towards the window from the door. Then he got up and started walking along the wall like he was prowling side by side with whatever was outside. He stopped moving and raised his head quickly to the ceiling. At the time, I felt the house shake a little with the sound of a large thud coming from the roof. Bear must have lost the thing's position because he had spun around, trying to see where it was. It was silent after a few seconds. Bear was quiet. There weren't any sounds of footsteps on the roof. Nothing, unless you count my heartbeat, which quickened. I decided to get up and try to hide in a room till this cow monster or whatever it was left. I didn't even take a second step when I heard a voice. Abby something. Abby something, I thought. Abby normal. It took me a few seconds, but then I realized it was a quote from Young Frankenstein, one of the movies I was watching last night. My blood went cold. Was it outside the house the whole time? The thought sent me into a panic. Jesus Christ, it screamed, setting Bear off. He had snarled and then ran towards the bedroom. Bear, wait, I shouted as I followed after him. Bear rammed his head into the door, forcing it open, and leapt towards the window. I stopped when I saw that the window was open, and a mixture of what looked like hooved fingers reached inside the house. Bright yellow lights appeared in the darkness outside. It was the cow's monster's eyes. Oh my gosh. Bear had leaped towards the creature, forcing it to retreat, as Bear went out the window and chased after it. Bear, come back, I shouted as I stuck my head out the window. I couldn't see where Bear was, but I heard the sound of his barks, and there was another sound, a laugh. I didn't get any sleep that night. I locked myself in a bathroom and cried. I was worried about Bear and what that thing was. I prayed to God that Bear was okay and that he managed to drive off the cow monster. Yeah, your dog's gone. Morning came when the sound of a rooster crowing. I got dressed, armed myself with a hunting rifle, my uncle's double-barrel shotgun, and left the house to search for Bear. I went to the side of the house where the bedroom window would be. I found muddy tracks belonging to Bear and another pair of tracks I assumed belonged to the creature. I followed them for 5 miles, occasionally finding drops of blood mixed in with the mud, making me worry every second I couldn't find Bear. After 30 minutes, I found something I wasn't expecting. A pile of organs covered in mud and blood. I gagged from the smell and teared up when I thought they belonged to Bear. I turned my head to see that there were more tracks. There's still hope, I thought. I followed the tracks for another 15 minutes and found the cow monster's corpse. I pulled out the hunting knife and stabbed it into its head. I've seen too many horror movies and didn't want to risk a sneak attack, but sure enough, it was dead. I couldn't find any more footprints belonging to Bear, so I searched for another hour before giving up. I couldn't find any more clues leading to Bear's whereabouts, and I was upset and confused. It was almost like Bear just grew wings and disappeared. I wasn't in the mood to do anything all day. I know I had work to do, but I just couldn't. Bear was on my mind. I motivated myself to at least feed the livestock. After that, I just spent the rest of the time doing nothing. When dinner time came, I didn't eat. I had made food for Bear just in case the smell attracted him back. As I opened the door, I fell back and dropped the food. Right in front of the house was Bear, sitting and staring at me. Bear, I shouted as I ran over to hug him. Do not hug Bear. He fell off when I hugged him. It was like I was hugging a bag of dried up leaves. I pulled away and looked at him. His face seemed off as well. His pupils were so dilated that it almost looked like he had no irises at all. He wasn't panting, and now that I think of it, I don't think he was breathing either. Hey Bear, I said, dinner is ready, come eat. As I walked inside, I kept the door open for Bear so he could get inside. He just kept staring at me, not making any movements at all. What's wrong? Are you coming? I asked. Bear just stayed where he was for another minute before coming inside. I picked up the food I had dropped as he made his way towards the bedroom, and I soon followed after when I had picked up all his dog food. When I entered the bedroom, Bear was sitting in front of the open window where he had leapt out last night. I closed it after putting his food bowl in front of him and went to make myself dinner. The rest of the night was uneventful. After eating, I went to bed early and woke up at 1:25 a.m. I felt like I was being watched and looked around, but there was nobody there. The door was open, and I assumed Bear was sleeping elsewhere. I shut my eyes and lowered myself back into bed so I could get comfy once more. When my head hit the pillows, I would open my eyes. I screamed as I saw Bear standing on the ceiling. He was positioned like a spider, waiting for its prey to get trapped in its web. I could see that his throat was slit, the same way the cows had their throats slit. I realized Bear didn't kill the cow monster. It had killed him and taken control of his body. The bear thing must have seen the look of horror on my face because it had smiled in a way a dog could never smile. It was too human. Suddenly, a pair of hands exited Bear's slitted throat as he leapt down from the ceiling. They tried to grab my throat as Bear's mouth opened wide to bite my head. I took the pillow and smacked him with it, knocking him to the side of the bed as I ran out of the room. It wasn't long before Bear regained his footing and crawled all along the walls to chase after me. The bear thing began to whine like it was hurt, but a pillow couldn't have done any damage. I tripped on a stack of movies and slammed my face into the wall. The bear thing jumped onto me and grabbed hold of my neck. Its mouth opened wider as the whine grew louder and more painful. I realized that it wasn't forming the sound from its mouth. It sounded like it was playing a recording of it gutting Bear alive. It was making me listen to Bear's final moments on repeat. "What are you?" I shouted as I tried to loosen the hand's grip on my neck. The bear thing's mouth had shut on my head, digging its teeth into my head and chin. I was engulfed in the darkness of its mouth. Suddenly, I saw the same bright yellow lights from last night. The eyes were coming from inside the bear thing mouth. They watched me as I struggled to free myself. I started to cry. I couldn't do anything else. The whining continued and it set me off. I ran my head deeper into the bear thing's mouth. Its teeth dragged against my skull, but I had to loosen its grip around my neck. I slammed my uncle's recliner on top of the monster, which gave me time to grab my car keys and run to my car. I had no time to grab my other things or anything to defend myself. I slammed the car door shut and locked it before starting my car. I was able to get away with a bruised throat and a few scratches. I looked in my rearview mirror to see something other than the bear thing. What I saw was an old naked woman. Her body was covered in a pattern of blood that looked like it was ritualistic. She was also wearing what looked like a wolfskin rug on her body, covering her head, back, and arms. My stomach turned as I realized this wolfskin rug she was wearing was Bear. She had skinned him and wore him like one of those Laplander animal hats. I was on the verge of a panic attack as I saw the woman get on all fours and slowly transform into my deceased dog. She ran opposite of me. I lost sight of her after a minute, and just as I did, I let all of my emotions out. The tears in my eyes blocked my view of the road. I blacked out as I hit a large rock and crashed, nearly throwing myself out of my car. I woke up in a hospital bed. Apparently, my uncle had recovered from his surgery and was on his way home when he saw me in my wrecked car. I was asleep for 3 days. The whole time, he stayed by my side until I woke up. He had all sorts of questions he wanted to ask me. I thought about my answers carefully. I thought nobody would believe my experience at the ranch and about the woman that wore animal skins and became them. So I told my uncle that a wild cougar had attacked me at his home and killed some of his livestock, including my dog Bear. My uncle was saddened from the losses, but was just thankful I was alive. I stayed in the hospital a few more days, my uncle never leaving my side. He drove me home after I recovered, and it was the last time I would see him alive. Dude, you wouldn't warn your uncle about this freaking skinwalker or whatever the heck it is? That's messed up. I sit here writing about my experience a few days after I attended my Uncle Shag's funeral. His ranch had caught on fire. I think he had been visited by the woman just like I had and defended himself the best way he could. My heart is filled with nothing but guilt and regret. I kept thinking that I should have told the truth, even if it would have sounded insane. I mean, would you believe me? I mean, with that detailed of a story, yeah, I'd believe you. I wouldn't go there. What are you talking about? I wonder, though, when the woman visited him, was it Bear or some other animal whose skin she was wearing? I don't know. I just wish I could see Uncle Shag and Bear to tell them both I'm sorry. So sorry that I didn't tell the whole story to my uncle, and sorry I couldn't protect Bear. There's nothing more that I can say. Just to whoever reads this, if you see an animal with a slitted throat, run before it's too late. Well, that was an absolutely terrifying story. I think moral of the story on this one is If your uncle asks you to watch after his ranch and you go there and then all the animals get their throats slit, maybe just go home. If you lose your dog, I'm sorry to hear that. The next story is called The Last to Leave. I booked the trip because I thought that's what good parents did. I hadn't been a good parent up until that point, at least not by my own accounting. I worked too much. I missed things. I answered emails while my kids talked to me. Somewhere along the way, I decided that presence could be substituted with planning, that a properly booked experience could stand in for time. The resort was called Timber Paws Lodge, friendly, animal-themed, the kind of place designed to feel wild without ever being unsafe. Everything under one roof. Water park, arcade, dining hall, no weather, no surprises. That was the promise. The kids were filled with excitement when we arrived. Wristbands snapped on, towels slung over shoulders. The air inside was damp and loud, humming with artificial daylight and the echo of screaming children. That sounds like a nightmare. Water thundered through twisting plastic tubes overhead like veins. Music pulsed nonstop, cheerful to the point of aggression. I counted the kids constantly at the pool. 1, 2, 3. Then one of the numbers didn't answer. At first, I didn't panic. I told myself she was in line for a slide, temporarily invisible in a place designed to scatter children. Minutes passed. I called her name, casually, then louder. My husband scanned the wave pool, irritation flickering across his face. "She's fine," he said. "She wanders." We told staff, then security, then a manager whose smile never quite slipped, even as her radio crackled nonstop. The park didn't stop for us. It absorbed us and kept moving. After an hour, the police arrived. That was when the guilt turned physical. The questions came in loops. What was she wearing? When did you see her last? Does she wander? I answered until my voice sounded like someone else's. They found her near the end of the day. She was sitting alone on a bench in a service corridor, wrapped in a towel too big for her, feet swinging. A maintenance man stood nearby, holding a clipboard he wasn't writing on. "She wandered back here," he said calmly. I kept an eye on her. She looked at me like I'd interrupted something. "He said it's quieter," she told me. "And that people don't get lost back here." The police thanked him. The manager apologized. Everyone wanted the story to end. I wanted it to end too. We thought about checking out, but my husband reminded me why we were there, so I agreed to stay. The next day, it got worse. We were at the pool when the first kid threw up, a boy near the edge of the lazy river, sudden and violent. Parents pulled their children away, embarrassed and annoyed. Another kid gagged near the stairs, then another. It spread in clusters. A lifeguard blew a whistle too long. The music cut out mid-song. Lights dimmed, then surged back to full brightness. A voice came over the loudspeaker. "Attention guests, for your safety, please return to your rooms immediately. We are initiating a temporary health protocol." Employees appeared everywhere at once, smiling too hard, guiding traffic away from the exits. In the elevator, my youngest leaned against me, glassy-eyed. "I feel weird," she said. Our room smelled like carpet cleaner and chlorine. The door closed behind us with a sound I didn't like. Another announcement followed. "Please remain in your rooms. Do not open the door. Do not use your phones. We will contact you." The kids got worse. Fever, vomiting, confusion. My husband paced. "We need to leave." "They told us to stay," I said. "That's not law." The arguing started quietly, then sharpened. Every decision felt like an indictment. Who had wanted this trip? Who had ignored what signs? A knock came. Not again. Late that night, it came back. "It's maintenance," a voice whispered, from earlier. I recognized him immediately. "They're not opening this floor again," he said. "They're waiting." "For what?" my husband asked. "For it to burn out," the man said, "one way or another." I didn't trust him. I didn't trust the resort either. He showed us a map, service corridors, water tunnels, a way out that wasn't meant for guests. "You leave now," he said, "or you don't leave." The kids whimpered behind me, fevered and small. I unlocked the door. We followed him through the hallways that smelled like bleach and rust, past doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The noise of the park faded. Water rushed through pipes overhead, steady and patient. We excited through a loading bay into cold night air. I didn't look back. 2 days later, a news alert finally came through. A viral outbreak, rapid onset, high fatality rate. Nearly everyone still inside Timberpaw's lodge had died. My gosh. The article mentioned containment failures, delayed evacuation, and investigation. It did not mention us. Sometimes I think about the booking confirmation, the photos, the lie I told myself about what good parents did. Sometimes I think about the maintenance man and how calm he was. That was the last time we took a family vacation. There won't be another. I think we all learned a valuable lesson from this story. Don't go to Timberpaw's resort because, you'll die. You won't make it back. You'll end up sick with some horrible virus. The next story today is called The Oak Ridge Inheritance. On April 2nd, 1989, my mom died in her sleep. She was 82 years old. My brother Benji found her lying on her back with her eyes closed. I found Benji screaming, hunched over her cold body and slapping her corpse. Big fat tears running down his wide eyes as he pled with her to wake up. I calmed him down, told him I'd call the doc, and sent him to wait in his garden. The barn needed cleaning, so after the call, I worked while I waited. It rained the day we buried her, like something out of a movie. A dull gray rain that lingered and made you feel wet even beneath your umbrella. Benji's tears were all spent by then, though. He'd done his crying before the rains, where everyone could see it. He didn't talk for 12 days straight after that, like back when he was little. On the evening of the 12th day, he up and told me he was going to clean the barn tomorrow. When I got up the next day, I found him swinging from the rafters. I'd stepped outside for my morning coffee and a cigarette, and saw that the barn doors were still open. I crossed the small yard that lay between the farmhouse and the barn, passing Benji's garden along the way. He'd just planted a few days before Mom passed, and already growth was overtaking a small plot. For all his faults, at least he had a green thumb. The barn smelled of hay and dried dung and old timber. The wood came from the forest that once grew around the property. Our family had long since cut and sold all the timber, starting all the way back when Grandpa acquired the land. We were some of the first to settle in these parts, and the barn was likely one of the oldest ones in the state. The wood from the forest was good and stiff, as sturdy as a man could ask for. Benji's body was stiff as a board when I cut him down. He landed in the hay. It sounded like a bag of flour, a dull, low thud. Okay, so is this guy just killing his relatives? All right, we got to keep going. He kicked up dust when he landed, dust that caught the morning light passing through the open barn doors. I sneezed as I climbed down the ladder and inhaled the dust. It got in my eyes and made them water. The dust made me cry. I poured whiskey in my coffee as I waited for the ambulance to arrive. I waited for a good long while. Our property was way out in the boonies. Technically, it all passed to Benji when Mom died. It's just mine now. Lily pawed at my knee as I sat waiting on the porch. She whimpered and stretched her jaw into a wide yawn. Her canines were sharp and yellow. Benji's teeth that never did come in right. The ambulance pulled up to the dirt road and past the "Welcome to Oak Ridge Farm" sign Benji and I had painted when we were children. I kept my hands in my jacket as the men approached. The responder wore his navy blues, and he had a lip swollen full with tobacco. His partner looked nervous. We spoke for a moment, then I led them into the barn. "Why'd you cut him down?" the lead asked. His name was Rick, and I took him for the lead because there was no way in hell the other guy was in charge. "Couldn't stand to leave him up there any longer," I said. "You really shouldn't have moved him. The police say it'll look fishy." I shrugged my shoulders at that. It was far too late to worry about how it all looked. I stepped back outside for some air while the boys called me for the ME. About 2 hours later, I said goodbye to the ME as he drove off with my brother's body. The police had their questions, sure, but I'd been drinking buddies with the chief for years. He knew me, he knew Mom, but most importantly, he knew Benji. Damn shame, he'd said shortly after entering the barn. My mind was on the cattle out in the pasture, and the wheat growing in the fields. It was almost time for harvest. I had to get things done. He show any signs? Ever tell you what was on his mind? I shook my head no. All he said was that he was going to go clean the barn in the morning. It was the first and last thing he'd said since Mom died. The chief sighed and shook his head. That's a shame. I walked the chief out to his car. He rolled the window down before driving off. I know you're going through a lot right now. Just take some time. Swing by in a few days and we'll get the paperwork squared away. I'll go ahead and let the county clerk know you'll be by soon for the property transfer and the dissolution of that. What was it called again? Conservatorship, I said quietly. I'll be up later. Get it taken care of. Right, you take care now. I watched the chief pull away, his truck kicking up a trailing ribbon of dirt that spiraled into thin clouds before settling in the grass on the sides of the road. He'd had a look in his eye, hadn't he? A queer one. The kind of look you give a thug or an out-of-towner, not a man who's driven you home countless times after one too many. No, I must have imagined it. I stayed outside a moment, pacing the gravel, hands laced behind my head, thinking, ignoring the sting of sweat on my rope-burnt palms. The paperwork all went through, and I buried Benji's beneath his garden. There was some debate with instant relatives who thought he should have been next to Mom. I didn't want to do that to her, despite it all. I made sure to keep the garden intact. It was a beautiful garden. That year was the biggest harvest Oak Ridge Farms had ever seen. Stalks of wheat taller than a man, with full heads of grain. I managed to pay off all the funeral expenses that year, with plenty left afterwards. I met a nice girl from the town over that year as well. Her name was Patty. Patty baked and sold her goods down at the local farmer's market. She used Oak Ridge wheat for her bread and sold out every time. People couldn't get enough of it. But whenever I ate it, all I tasted was ash. The herd was hit with a case of spring fever that year as well. The vet couldn't believe it. Neither could I. Every cow that year gave birth to twins. Some even had triplets, all of them healthy and strong. The vet said he'd never seen or heard of such a thing. The herd grew and grew, all of them fat and robust. Patty started selling their meat at the market as well. We could charge whatever we wanted, and people would pay it. That's how good everyone said the cattle at Oak Ridge Farms were. But whenever I ate it, no matter how long I made Patty grill it, all I could taste was raw flesh and blood. I could handle the wheat, I could handle the cattle, but what I couldn't handle, what no one could handle, was the garden. It seemed to grow with a mind of its own, spreading every year, no matter how often I fixed the fence and trimmed the plants. Patty didn't think much of it. In fact, she enjoyed the garden and its bounty. Looks like Benji's still helping out from beyond the grave, huh, hun? She'd say with a smile. I sure do wish I could have met him. He sounds like such a kind soul. I'd nod my head, but inside I knew something was wrong. The tomatoes burst in my mouth like pimples. The cucumbers cracked like bone. I couldn't eat any of it. I couldn't eat. Patty prided herself on preparing each meal from only what the Lord had blessed our farm with. She scolded me when she found grease stains on my shirt or empty bags and cups in my work truck. The fast stuff was all I could eat, all I could keep down. The worst came a year after Benji's death, on his anniversary. I'd stepped outside to eject the meal Patty had made. I had to, otherwise it would curdle in my stomach. She didn't know any of this. God, she didn't deserve any of this. I'd barely made it out of the door and leaned over the porch railing. I vomited right on top of Benji's grave. It was then I noticed the roses. They were magnificent. Large flowers of deep lavender grew across all the garden. They grew as I watched, their petals blossoming, their thorns stretching longer and longer. I threw up again and again. Their smell, their stench was overwhelming, like a field hit with blight, like a dead cow left to rot beneath the sun. Like Benji's room when he'd have an accident and Mom would ask me to help her clean it up. In that moment, I waited for Benji. I knew he was coming. I knew I was about to pay for what I'd done. But damn it all, it was my farm. It was always supposed to be my farm. Why hadn't she trusted me? Of course I was going to take care of him, as if I'd abandoned my only brother. To do that to me, to strip away all I had worked for and give it to an imbecile, what was she My tears mixed with the bile staining Benji's headstone as I waited for the roses to take me. I felt their petals lick my skin like the barbed tongue of the devil himself. Those thorns inched near the crown of my head, and I prepared myself to die, a wicked man, damned by my wronged brother, beneath the eyes of a just God. Only death never came. He whispered from the bushes. His voice laughed in the wind, but he never showed his face. The roses retreated, the thorns scratching my skin as they went, but leaving me otherwise unharmed. Patty found me there in the morning. Clothes were soaked with sweat, and she said I was shivering like I'd been out in a winter storm. I don't remember any of it. I still can't eat the food. I take no joy in the fruit of my labor, but I no longer care. Because there was another voice that night apart from death's, and it said, I love you. Wow, that was just one of those stories that leaves you with chills right at the end. Gosh, I can only imagine having to live with a guilt like that. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, please drop a like and subscribe. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Peace.